Good evening and welcome to TDM Talk Show. I'm your host, Kelsey Wilhelm. Our guest tonight is Andrew Scott, the Vice Chairman and CEO of Inside Asian Gaming. The group recently launched Game, a gaming industry-focused concept that brings together interviews, keynotes, presentations, and Ask Me Anything sessions, using a digital format amongst the ongoing epidemic. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
I saw the most recent edition that you'd done with MGM China CEO Grant Bowie, but that was the second edition you'd done, right?
Yeah, we had a kind of a full dress rehearsal before that, which was a bit more than a dress rehearsal, really. We had about, I think, 70 or 80 people there. So really we've done two so far.
Okay. How did the concept come up? I understand that it is an acronym. It's Gaming Asia Mega Experience. How did you arrive at that acronym?
Okay. So we backfitted the acronym to fit into game. The name's not so important. What's important is that we, with the advent of COVID-19 and everything that's happened and how it's completely changed the industry and the world, really, we were sitting around the office trying to work out what to do because it's devastated everyone's businesses, including ours. And we sort of noticed that there was a real need for people to talk and engage. If you think back to the liberalisation of the industry, maybe sort of 20 years ago, in the early 2000s, there was a real need to talk, or mid-2000s, there was a real need to talk, and there was a lot of conferences born out of that. So G2E Asia started and so forth. And these conferences had gone on, and Inside Asian Gaming had become lead media partner for G2E, for MGS, Macau Gaming Show, both in Macau, over in the Philippines, for Page, for a new show called Sigma Asia, ICE Asia, G2E Asia over there. So we were the exclusive lead media partner for all these shows. And there was a great need. The demand for the conference and talking had gone up, but the supply had completely collapsed because nobody can do events. So all these events were taken out. So we're sitting there thinking, well, actually, we need events now more than ever. How are we going to do it? And, well, the internet's been around for 27 years now, I think. And we thought, right.
It's gotten pretty popular by now also.
Yeah, the internet, I think you may have heard of it. So it was, look, we said, well, let's take it online. Let's do it. And it was all done very quickly. We built the website in 3 days. It was 9 days from the idea to our first dry run event. And so it's still in development now. It's still very, very young. And as you say, we've only had one full event, one practice and one full event. Our second event will be very imminent. And one of the good things about it is you can announce an event and be doing it 2 days later.
True.
So that's
you have a captive audience, that's for sure.
Well, yes, and you don't have to fly to a place. You don't have to stay in a hotel. So the cost for the people attending the event is very low, and they just need to be in front of a laptop or in front of a computer or even at their phone at 5 p.m. on a Tuesday. So that's very easy for them.
Well, that being said, on the organizational side, you went straight for a heavy hitter. I mean, getting the MGM China CEO, and him being so candid within the conversation that you did have then. There were some very tough questions. There were questions about the IVS, about the obviously a lot of gaming license retendering. Why Grant Bowie?
Well, we went for the biggest name that we could get in the shortest period of time. I mean, and Grant was very kind to come on and do it, and he was very candid. And I was, I don't want to say I was a little bit surprised, but I was a little bit surprised, to be frank. And he was good. He was great. So he responded well, and I'd love to have all his counterparts on over time. I'd love to have Lawrence Ho and Francis Loy and all of those on eventually, or maybe perhaps Kevin Kelly or whoever, and not just for Macau, but also for the IRs in the Philippines, Korea, the whole industry, and not necessarily just gaming people either. Other people involved in tourism, entertainment in Asia.
So yeah, this has started off as a gaming-centric concept, right? It is for people within the industry mostly, at least from what I'd seen through the registry and the website. Is there the intention then, you kind of led me to the point, is there the intention to expand this further into other areas?
Yes.
Hotels automatically are pretty much linked in, but would you consider also having people with hotels that have no gaming link whatsoever?
Absolutely. It's all part of the same industry. So at IAG, even though the IAG stands for Inside Asian Gaming, if we had our time over again, we probably wouldn't call that. We'd probably call it Inside Asian Integrated Resorts or something like that.
IR has been the key term that's been pushed.
Yeah, well, 15 years ago when it was named, perhaps IR wasn't as big. But really, people don't, people come for the whole experience. People come to Macau, or they go to the Philippines, or they go to Singapore, to Marina Bay Sands, or Resorts World Sentosa for the whole experience. And they play, and they stay in a hotel, and they have food and beverage, and they have entertainment, and that's all part of the offering. Of course, gaming is the economic engine of it all that allows for those non-gaming things to happen, but it's all part of a total experience.
Well, speaking of how the economic engine does allow for everything to happen, we're undergoing a completely unprecedented situation here in Macau, which we saw. I mean, the numbers came in for April GGR, and it was 754 million down. Pataka is down by 97%, nearly 97%. At the same time, obviously, visitation, it goes hand in hand, was down 94% in March. We only had 212,000 people came in. Only less than 7,000 of those were on the IVS. From the industry side of things, from the feedback that you're getting from people, is there any sign of despair, or are people using this time to retool, and are they putting a date on which they can reopen? I know you, not reopen, but have things go back to normal. I know you asked Grant that directly. Are you getting any feeling? Is it a June or July? Is it a September, October? Is it a...
Okay, well, you've asked 3 questions there. I'll try to see if I can remember all 3 of them. First of all, what are they using the time for? Good question. There's no flat, straight answer to that, because different people are responding in different ways. And I think you can put the response into 2 very distinct camps: fight and flight. Do flight first. Run away, bury your head in the sand, pretend nothing's happening. It's so devastating what's happened to the industry. It's down 97%. Well, that's a little bit better than the 100% it was down during the 2 weeks we were closed. It's so devastating. It is not, the words don't exist. Everyone says unprecedented and various other words, but it is so devastating. This is the worst thing to happen to this industry and most industries and economies throughout the world since World War II. So this is worse than SARS, way worse. This is worse than GFC. This is worse than 87. You were not young enough to remember 87, but I was a youngster at the time, and I remember the collapse on Black Monday on 87. That was a disaster. This is worse than any of those. And anyone who tells you it's not is wrong. It is so devastating. Not necessarily the disease is devastating, but the economic effect and the effect on our world. I mean, the unemployment is just, I could go on and on. We don't have time for me to go on and on about how bad it is. So the first thing to do is to recognise it's so bad. Now, some people's reaction to that is to freeze and bury their heads in the sand and just pray that it will all go away and go back to normal. You know, if I had $1 for every time somebody said, when will it go back to normal, I'd be very rich. So that's one reaction. The other reaction is to go, okay, this is a natural pivot point, and the world is going to change, just like it did after 9/11. I think 9/11, in some ways, is a good analogy. There was a pre-9/11 world and a post-9/11 world. That's true. And and I hate to say it, but I'm going to say it, the new normal, it's become a cliche already, will be different to the old normal, just as it was after September 11. Some aspects of the new normal will be the same as the old normal. Actually, many aspects will be the same, but there will definitely be some long-term changes, some permanent changes. And now is the time, while things are quiet, for companies to, as you said, retool, whatever you want to call it, is to examine their own game. And we're doing that. IAG is doing that as a company and re-examining what we do. And every business, big or small, globally needs to do that.
Now, within Macau, these 6 operators have managed to make quite a bit of money over the time they've been operating here in Macau.
$1 or
it's been
two.
20, yeah. And so they are able to approach this crisis from a position of fiscal strength. Some of them have chosen to, continue with their investments, continue retooling their properties. They are able to do that, and despite, some of the shocking results that we see financially. But what about the SMEs? I mean, as somebody who is running an SME in Macau and who is in contact with many SMEs in Macau, what is your vision as towards how many of these companies are actually going to survive?
First of all, it's an absolute disaster for them. To say anything but that. The first step in addressing this is to acknowledge it. And it is an absolutely unmitigated disaster. As you say, those companies, the concessionaires, I think by and large they've done a pretty good job. They've kept their employees on, they've kept paying their bills. There have been some, I'm going to single out, they've all done good stuff, but I'm going to single out MGM and what they did with the SMEs in picking out some SMEs and actually paying them effectively in advance. That was a great initiative, and they've all done great initiatives, and they've got the financial wherewithal to do that. The SMEs, gee, it's really tough, and it varies depending upon what kind of business that you're in. If you're in the direct supply chain to one of those concessionaires and the need for whatever good or product that you sell is dried up, you're in a world of hurt.
Yeah.
And it all comes down to the financial ability of the owners and their appetite for riding it out, and also their ability to pivot their business. Some businesses have pivoted. So, for example, in IAG, some of our customers are suppliers of slot machines and hardware to the industry. Some of them have actually gone into making PPE. And things like that. So they've had they've taken the fight, not the flight. They've said, right, we need to pivot, we need to change in some way. And we are trying to do it as IAG, and many companies are trying to do it with varying degrees of success depending upon their business's ability to do that. But honestly, I think it's going to be a big, big problem. Yes, we are going to see businesses, sadly, go under from this.
We've seen that the government has chosen to react and not be passive in terms of how it's approaching everything. And specifically, we've had the Secretary for Economy and Finance, Lê Hoài Nông. He came in and he announced these measures. They were the measures announced in the policy address. There are some fiscal stimulus. Is that applicable to your company as well?
Sadly, essentially no.
Okay.
Look, first comment I'd make about that is I think the government in Macau have responded excellently. I think they've done a really, really good job. Is it perfect? No, of course it's not perfect. But given that they're a brand new government that started on 20th of December, and given this was totally unexpected, nothing like this has ever happened before, all things considered, looking at their overall response, good job. Very, very, very good job. Number one priority in any society needs to be the health and safety of the people in the society. And we've had 45 cases here, a first wave, if you can call it a wave of 10, and a second wave of 35. They're nearly all recovered. We haven't had a case here, new case for 28 days. I think we've got 5 active cases left. We're down to less than 100 people in quarantine. Great. And that's down to us all wearing masks, us all being very careful, and the government being very aggressive and proactive as to what it's done. So excellent job. Now, to get more directly to your question about SMEs, look, it's good that they've done some stimulus. They have made some good moves. Your specific question about our company, not particularly applicable, because I've got a friend with a company in Hong Kong, and he's just received about $7 million from the government. I think it was 54,000 or 56,000 per employee registered with the MPF. And he's got over 100 employees. He got $7 million straight into his bank account, no questions asked. Now that allows him to keep paying his employees for months. The most that our company can receive is 100,000, and to be frank, 100,000 doesn't really cut it. I know 15,000 has been given to employees, but if you've already got a job and your company hasn't reduced your salary, I'm going to say something that's going to be unpopular with my employees and probably more unpopular with employers. Why are the employees getting an extra 15,000? I know it's hopefully to stimulate the economy, but we've still got to pay their salaries. So for our company, it hasn't been particularly great. Well, don't get me wrong, we're very grateful for the 100 grand, which we haven't seen yet. We're not sure how that's coming, but we're told that it's coming. But, you know, 100 grand is not going to be the difference between us going under and not going under. It really does need to be in the millions.
And I mean, we've seen that they've launched things such as the consumption vouchers, the 3,000, 5,000, which, you know, it's spendable on certain items, certain things, but it doesn't exactly cover all the industries. You
know, you've got 3,000 in your pocket. Macau is a high salary place. The average salary in Macau, I think, is around 20,000 patakas across the board. There's plenty of people getting paid more than that. 3,000 is not, you know, it's a night out. It's not a life changer. Don't get me wrong, I'm very grateful to the government for doing it. I think it's excellent, but it's probably not the difference between survival and not survival for many companies. Yeah, we're going to see. It's going to be an ongoing situation. We're going to see how many other measures are announced over time, because they've said before that
it has to progress. They have to see the situation in Macau, and I'm sure that we'll be seeing some more policies in the future based upon how bad things actually get. You, in terms of IAG, you're not only focused on Macau. Obviously, when Japan announced that it was going to finally be moving forward with the IRs, you were quick to also jump in, and you set up a base in Japan also, right?
We have IAG
Team there.
stands for Inside Asian Gaming, but obviously the centre of Asian gaming is Macau.
Yes.
Macau's our head office, always has been, always will be. Just like you would imagine, say, Las Vegas is the centre of North American gaming. But when Japan opens, I'm very much of the view that it will be the second biggest in Asia, without a doubt. So we launched a branch, IAG Japan in January 2019 after observing Japan for 20 years, after going there quite regularly for 2 years, and after planning specifically to launch that business for about 8 months.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's been going, May, so you look at almost a year and a half. It'll be a year and a half next month. And it's been going well, apart from, of course, the COVID-19 situation we find ourselves in, and Japan finds itself in as well.
Yeah, it seems like everything that had been progressing at such a quite rapid pace actually got kind of slowed down. What's the feeling in terms of on the ground there?
Well, I'm really surprised to hear you say rapid in Japan in the same sentence.
Yeah, well,
rapid
progressive
now,
stages
yeah,
of
it's actually,
rapid
been
and
going
slow.
on for 20 years, or even longer actually. But yes, the key period of time for Japan is the 4th of January to the 30th of July next year. So that is the period where each of the local governments will go with their IR partners to the central government with their proposal. Now, that has not changed. The central government has not changed those dates. So each of the 4 local governments that have put their hands up and said, we want to do it, which is Osaka, Yokohama, Nagasaki and Wakayama, they've messed around with their dates a little bit, but it doesn't really matter. The focus is all on that critical date, 30th of July 2021. That hasn't changed yet.
Yeah.
Now, it might change, and I would not be surprised if it changed, but right now the government's saying, I guess it's far enough away into the future for them to hope that they wouldn't have to change it.
Okay. Well, focusing back home, because we're also 2021, 2022. 2022 is going to be our key kind of deciding moment to see whether these licenses get pushed back another 5 years or if they're going to go ahead with the retendering process amongst all the mess that this year is going to pan out to be and everything that is going to be happening from then on. What's your opinion? I've heard that it's good now for the licenses to be extended by another 5 years, not only to give the government time to prepare itself and make sure that they do the public consultation like they announced that they were going to be doing, but also because the companies are waiting for this retendering process and they are on their best behavior, let's put it that way.
All right, well, the first comment I would make about that is that any pundit, me, somebody else, anybody who tells you that they know what's going on, they don't, right? And I don't even believe that the government fully knows what they're doing yet, and nor do they need to yet. Of course, time is ticking. We are getting closer.
It's
no doubt about
pretty
that. You
crunch time frame now.
Well, you saw Davis Fong get up and say that, well, this is how long it took last time.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's a pretty, pretty much the voice of reason. So we should need to respect what Mr. Fong said, or Dr. Fong says. But look, I think anybody, as I say, anybody who says they know, forget that. Now, you could speculate, right? It's my job to speculate, and you want me to speculate, so I'll speculate. In terms of timing, yes, they have the ability to push up to 5 years, and it happened before last time, so it would not be unreasonable for it to happen again. It would probably not be a desired outcome for the concessionaires. They would like to get clarity for their investment decisions and their bankers and so forth. Having said that, they're in a clearly quite lucrative business, and they understand that that imposes a responsibility upon them. And I think by and large, pretty much a greater extent, they're executing on that CSR responsibility they have to the society of Macau. So I think they would shrug and grin and bear it if it was to be pushed forward a little bit, and the government would probably get, perhaps, and society perhaps would get some advantage from that, and there would be not much that they could do about that. So if it did happen, it wouldn't be the end of the world. It happened last time, and it would be okay. Of course, there are parties that would prefer it not to happen, would prefer for the clarity to come. But we're not. It's not a struggling business, so it can deal with a lack of clarity if it has to.
I mean, yeah, it is a pretty short time frame, and especially with the public consultation that they announced, it's going to be interesting. It's interesting that you mentioned the CSR because it seems like that's going to be a part of the legislation after the comments by the chief executive, Ho Yat-seng, talking specifically in the wake of him pointing the finger during the whole hotel quarantine situation, and then an operator making available a large hotel.
Well, let's name them. Let's give them credit.
Oh yeah, for the Sheraton, Sands,
yeah. Let's credit where credit's due. Yeah.
And but they are under a lot of pressure. I mean, because of they are the largest employer in between the hotel and the casino side, but the government has made it very clear that they need to keep that employment, that they shouldn't be firing people left and right. Is that, given that this is a free market and a free economy, is that a correct pressure to be putting the companies under?
It is not for somebody like me to tell the government what is correct or incorrect. I would not be so presumptuous to do so. But I would say that if I were in the shoes of an operator, if I were COO or CEO of a concessionaire, I would be very, very grateful for being in this market and having the opportunity to have such a lucrative business, and I would understand the obligations that brings. And if the obligations are pushed up a little bit, yeah, it's probably wearable. At the end of the day, it comes down to an ROI, and you've got to remember that those CEOs also have a fiduciary duty to their shareholders to give a reasonable return. But if I was in a wonderful job that paid triple what I was worth, not saying the operator's getting triple what they're worth, but say I was in a job that I was being paid handsomely, and somebody said, oh, it's probably not a bad idea if you donate a small amount of money to that charity over there. Well, as a person, I'd do it, so would you. So as a company is really just like a big person in some ways. So I think it's quite reasonable. And if our new CE, not so new CE now, wants to put a little bit of pressure on the operators to do more, I don't think that's unreasonable.
He made an interesting statement the other day in the Q&A after his policy address, and he said that not only can the casinos weather it, or he said something like they will survive or they will be able to get through, but he said that they had not had close contact with the industry over the past few months. Have you heard anything about that? That was a question also that came up within the Q&A with Grant Bowie. How much contact has the government had with the operators? Have you heard whether there is ongoing dialogue?
Well, whenever you ask that question, the answer is yes, there's ongoing dialogue. Now, whether that's close contact or not might come down to how you define close contact. So it wouldn't, again, I'm not privy to those conversations, and nor should I be. So I couldn't really give you an answer on that. But so the operators say they're in constant communication. So and I couldn't believe that they wouldn't be. Well, they would certainly be reaching out anyway. So I couldn't believe that they would be shunning communication at such a critical time as we are now. I just want to pick up on a point you said before about some criticism of the operators with the hotels not supplying. My understanding from what I've heard from a number of the operators is that was more of a misunderstanding than anything else, and that there was perhaps a little bit of a communication breakdown, or the message didn't get through in the right way or something like that. And then once it did, I think Sands produced Sheraton pretty quickly. And I think that there are other operators who may have behind the scenes or even openly, overtly and publicly said that, look, if it was needed, we would be open to that too. And I'd be pretty surprised if there wasn't. So, well, you've already got 2 of the 6 Avenue SJM have been quite active, and Sands already has. I couldn't imagine the other 4 wouldn't come forth if they were. Well,
and they have helped in other ways. We've seen the mask donations, the PPE, the alcohol donations. They have been helping within the community and also in terms of the government itself. Going back to the license retendering, because that is one of the hot topics, it's interesting to see junkets. Junkets were very high on the radar when everybody was kind of speculating that Sun City would be up for a potential 7th license, but there hasn't been too much talk about them recently. What do you think their role is going to be within the retendering process?
That's a really good question, and a really interesting question, and a complicated question. I don't know if we have time to do it justice, but a few comments. When I first came to Macau, junkets represented 80% of the GGR and basically controlled all the play. Then it went down to about 50%. It's been of recent times before COVID-19. It's been quite interesting to see very recently that the small amount of action that we do have going on at the moment is mainly VIP action because it's in the junket room. So actually right now, their percentage is probably quite high. Might be back to close to 100% again. Especially with so few people on the main gaming floor. IAG's been going and doing spot checks of that, and on average there's 14 people at any given moment on average on the main gaming floor of Macau's 11 biggest IRs, which is basically none.
This is customers?
Customers, 14 people playing on average in the 11 biggest IRs in Macau on a weekday afternoon. So where normally there would be thousands. So I think so to get more specific to your question about junkets in the retendering process. So I think what's happened in the junket industry in Macau has been really healthy. It's been a really good thing. I think the DICJ have done I think the DICJ gets a bad rap in their managing of junkets. I think that they've actually done a very good job. And I think the junkets get a bad rap too. There's been consolidation. Again, when I first came to Macau, there were 300 junkets. Now there's under 100. And to be honest, there's really only 4. There's Sun City, Guangdong, Tokchun, and Megstar are basically the big 4. And Sun City, by far, is the biggest of. Let's say 45%, perhaps 50% of the whole thing. So they're equal to the other 3 all put together. I think Sun City has got a bad rap over the years, and because you remember that organisation and the people involved with that organisation predate the establishment of Sun City and have been involved in the industry for decades. Now, if you look at the Macau gaming industry many decades ago and compare it to now, it's obviously much more professional now. It's obviously much more corporatised. Back then it was more just as Las Vegas was. Just as Las Vegas was no different, right? Las Vegas, let's be honest, Las Vegas started off as a gangster town that eventually became suit and tie. And Macau's going through that process too. And I actually believe that Sun City, with its size and its leadership, actually craves that, actually craving that legitimacy. They've got listed entities. They obviously clearly want to be an operator. They've done what they've done in Vietnam with Hoi An. They've done what they've done in the Philippines with Westside for Resorts World opening up there. They have interests in operations in Busan, in Korea, even Cambodia. They've had a little play down there too. So they clearly want to be an operator. They clearly want to be more corporatized, and they clearly want to shake off the past and move forward as an operator. And good luck to them. Good luck to them. They need to overcome a bit of baggage from the past, and I think they're on the process of doing that. Sooner or later, it'll happen. So could they be a player? Could they be a 7th concessionaire? Of course they could. Of course they could. Would they be accepted? I don't know. That would,
well, and they'd have other players to contend with as well. We saw in the first tender that there were a lot of big name companies that were coming in, and they're going to have to be able to match up against them and match the offers.
You've got to remember the Galaxy didn't run a casino before. I mean,
it was a construction company.
It was a construction company. It was KY. It was a construction company. They did. A lot of people forget they did have hotels. They did have hospitality, both in the US and China. So that was good. And they had Chinese connections, which was good. But so does Sun City. So for anyone to write Sun City off and say, no, it's impossible, they can't be the 7th concessionaire. No, that's not true to write them off. I'm not saying they will be, but they have their challenges to overcome, as do all of them. So their hat's in the ring just like anybody else's is, and they've got to overcome their past, and they've also got to demonstrate what they would do in the future.
And there's still some land in Cotai, so let's see what happens.
There's plenty of land in Cotai. Anyone who tells you there's no land in Cotai, there's land in Cotai, and there's plenty of, I see barges with sand on them all the time. So Macau is 31 square kilometres, and 100 years ago, what was it, 4 square kilometres? Macau can grow. It's not land's not a problem. We can make land.
Well, back to game. Unfortunately, we're running short on time. I understand that you are having one soon. Would be very happy if you can share with us the next guest. I don't know if you can yet, but
I can't, because we do have somebody, but they're just getting permission at the moment from their lords and masters. So, but the good thing about game is because of the online format that it is, and the membership we have through the website. We developed a website for it, iaggame.com, is that we can announce one and be doing it in 2 days' time. So we might be doing one in a few days. I might get the the phone call tomorrow, and we do it in a few days' time. But generally, we're trying to do them Tuesdays. Tuesdays at 5 p.m. seems to be the time we've settled on.
Okay. Once, I mean, because right now it's primarily a digital format. Once everything starts to kind of calm down, are you thinking of shifting it also to, I mean, once the G2Es reopen and everything, is that one of the intentions, to have something that's more in person?
It's not meant to be just an online format. It's meant to be more than that. It's not just meant to be a conference. We won't call it a webinar. I hate webinars. There's so many boring webinars going around right now, and they're all the same, and they're all so lack of engagement. Ours is different. We have people on the screen. Everybody can see everybody in the audience. We have 10 minutes, and we've just decided to extend that to 15 and maybe even 20. Before the event happens, we open the welcome room, and everybody gets in there and chats in the welcome room, which is great.
Good place to meet other people in the industry.
Meet other people in the it's quite fun actually. They get in there and they, I haven't seen you for years, and that sort of thing. So we're building that. We have the dedicated website isn't just going to be a brochure for the next game event. We're actually building a community in that website.
Okay.
So people will eventually have an account in there where they'll be able to have a page for themselves. They'll be able to even business match, share information.
Okay.
So the idea is for it to be a platform for sharing information about the industry, especially now that we're going through this difficult time and things are going to change. So now's a time that we need to talk in a great deal, but we always need to talk.
Yeah.
So that's the plan.
Okay, well, I look forward to seeing it grow, and I also look forward to seeing the next guest on there. Thank you again for sharing your insights and expertise with us here.
Thanks for having me, Kelsey.
That's all for this evening. Join us again next week for more TDM Talk Show. Good night.